95% of the decisions you make each day are driven by habits, not by reason. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But think about your morning. You woke up, reached for your phone, scrolled through the news, made your usual cup of coffee, and began another day, just like yesterday, and the day before that. Everything happens so quickly that we hardly notice. We react, respond, decide, as if some invisible hand has pressed the auto button. And then at the end of the day, sitting in quiet, we wonder, have I truly chosen anything for myself today? Sometimes we get angry without knowing why. Sometimes we rush to believe something just because it feels right. And sometimes we repeat the same old mistake, even after promising ourselves we never would again. Why does this happen? Maybe we've never really understood how our mind works. That's where Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow begins. He shows that within each of us, two worlds coexist, one that reacts fast and intuitively, and one that moves slow, deliberate, and thoughtful. But most of the time, it's the fast one that quietly takes control, shaping how we see, how we believe, how we live, and sometimes making us regret the choices we once thought were right. What makes this book remarkable is not that it teaches us to think smarter, but that it helps us see how we think. And once we understand that mechanism, we can begin to pause, just for a moment, before reacting, to truly choose for ourselves. Welcome to Juliana Gray, where every book is not only a source of knowledge, but a mirror that helps you see yourself more clearly, gently, truthfully, and a little deeper each day. Have you ever felt like there are two parts of you coexisting inside your mind? One reacts instantly, almost instinctively. The other is slower, more thoughtful. It observes, analyzes, and often only shows up after everything has already happened. Kahneman calls them two systems of thinking, the two ways our brain operates every single day. The first one, fast thinking, is the automatic system. It helps you recognize a familiar face in a crowd, avoid a speeding car, or answer a simple question like, "What's 2 + 2?" Everything happens quickly, guided by intuition, requiring no effort. It's like your mind's autopilot. Convenient, energy-saving, and most of the time, surprisingly reliable. But then there's the second system, slow thinking. This is where reason lives. It's the part that pauses, analyzes, and carefully decides. When you try to multiply 47 by 36 in your head, or when you stand before an important choice, this part comes alive. It demands focus, drains energy, and sometimes makes you feel tired or even a little heavy. The interesting thing is, our brain always prefers the easier route. It loves to stay in autopilot mode because that means less effort, less thinking. Yet that's exactly why we often react instead of reflect. Why we trust our first impressions, and sometimes make decisions we later regret. It's like driving down a familiar road, arriving at your destination, only to realize you remember nothing of the journey. Fast thinking works the same way. It helps us move through life easily, but if we're not mindful, it can quietly lead us off course without us even knowing. When we begin to understand these two systems, we start to see how the mind truly works. And perhaps for the first time, we notice that thin, quiet distance between the one who is thinking and the one who is silently watching those thoughts. Have you ever been so sure about something, only to realize later that you were completely wrong? An investor who trusts his gut, only to lose everything. A manager who misjudges an employee because that first impression felt so convincing. And sometimes, we ourselves make important decisions simply because it feels right. Kahneman reminds us, feeling right doesn't mean being right. Most of what we call intuition is actually driven by memory and emotion, fragments that aren't always reliable. When we meet someone who reminds us of a person who once hurt us, the brain quickly attaches the same emotion to them. When we get used to a number, an idea, or a belief, our mind automatically makes it feel true, simply because it's familiar. The danger is that fast thinking operates silently. Most of the time, we don't even realize it's leading us, especially at work, when we're tired, overwhelmed by deadlines, or forced to make decisions under pressure. Reason begins to fade, and intuition takes control. We think we're being wise, when in fact, we're just reacting to our own emotional reflexes. Once we understand this, we begin to see that not every feeling of certainty deserves our trust. Sometimes the things that make us most confident are the very things that lead us into mistakes. Perhaps the first step of wisdom isn't to think faster, but to pause long enough to notice when our emotions are quietly deceiving us. Why are we so easily misled? Let's look at the thinking traps Kahneman uncovered, the subtle biases that silently shape how we see the world every single day. Have you ever noticed that sometimes we don't really seek the truth? We simply look for something that makes us feel safe? Our brain is wired that way, not to be right, but to feel okay. And because of that, we easily fall into what Kahneman calls cognitive biases, the invisible traps of the mind. The first trap is thinking in stereotypes. When you meet someone, within seconds your brain has already labeled them. This person seems friendly, that one arrogant, another must be intelligent. All of it based on appearances, or a few tiny details. Like when you see someone reading on a train, you instantly assume they're intellectual. But in truth, you're not seeing them as they really are. You're seeing them through the filters of your own habits and assumptions. The second trap is the bias of familiarity. Our brain often confuses what's easy to recall with what's actually true. If you've recently heard a lot about plane crashes, you'll start to feel like flying is dangerous, even though statistically, it's one of the safest things you can do. The mind doesn't distinguish between what's emotionally vivid and what's objectively real. It simply remembers what moved you the most. And the last trap is the illusion of causality. We have a habit of always searching for reasons, even when there may be none at all. When we fail, we blame circumstances. When someone succeeds, we think they were lucky or had a secret formula. But in reality, many things in life are just the tangled result of countless random factors, not a single clear cause. These biases make us feel as though we understand, while in truth, we're just arranging the world in a way that feels easier to live with. And if we don't notice it, we'll keep living inside stories of our own making, stories that feel right, but may quietly drift away from the truth. Perhaps in many moments of life, we believe in feelings more than in facts. And maybe true wisdom begins the moment we dare to look deeper, beyond the shortcuts of our own mind, to what Kahneman calls slow thinking, the kind of thinking that helps us understand instead of just react. Have you ever noticed that sometimes we don't really seek the truth? We simply look for something that makes us feel safe? Our brain is wired that way, not to be right, but to feel okay. And because of that, we easily fall into what Kahneman calls cognitive biases, the invisible traps of the mind. The first trap is thinking in stereotypes. When you meet someone, within seconds your brain has already labeled them. This person seems friendly, that one arrogant, another must be intelligent. All of it based on appearances, or a few tiny details. Like when you see someone reading on a train, you instantly assume they're intellectual. But in truth, you're not seeing them as they really are. You're seeing them through the filters of your own habits and assumptions. The second trap is the bias of familiarity. Our brain often confuses what's easy to recall with what's actually true. If you've recently heard a lot about plane crashes, you'll start to feel like flying is dangerous. Even though statistically, it's one of the safest things you can do. The mind doesn't distinguish between what's emotionally vivid and what's objectively real. It simply remembers what moved you the most. And the last trap is the illusion of causality. We have a habit of always searching for reasons, even when there may be none at all. When we fail, we blame circumstances. When someone succeeds, we think they were lucky or had a secret formula. But in reality, many things in life are just the tangled result of countless random factors, not a single clear cause. These biases make us feel as though we understand, while in truth, we're just arranging the world in a way that feels easier to live with. And if we don't notice it, we'll keep living inside stories of our own making, stories that feel right, but may quietly drift away from the truth. Perhaps, in many moments of life, we believe in feelings more than in facts. And maybe true wisdom begins the moment we dare to look deeper, beyond the shortcuts of our own mind, to what Kahneman calls slow thinking, the kind of thinking that helps us understand, instead of just react. We don't see the world as it truly is. We see it the way our brain wants us to see it. Everything you believe, every decision you make, is filtered through the lens of perception. And sometimes, those very lenses distort reality. Kahneman calls them psychological effects, subtle illusions the mind creates to make us feel safer inside our own thoughts. The first one is the halo effect. When we like someone, we tend to believe everything about them is good. If a famous person endorses a product, we assume that product must be worth buying. If someone seems kind, we imagine they must also be competent. From one bright first impression, we let that light spill over everything else. The second is the anchoring effect. Our brains tend to get stuck on the first piece of information we receive. When you see a jacket priced at $100, then discounted to $60, it feels like a bargain, even if its real value is closer to $30. That first number becomes a mental anchor that shapes every judgment afterward, and we rarely notice how strongly it pulls us. The third is the framing effect. The same fact presented in a different way can change how we feel entirely. If a doctor says a surgery has a 90% survival rate, we feel reassured. But if they say the death rate is 10%, anxiety sets in, even though both mean exactly the same thing. The frame of information quietly rewires our emotions and decisions. And finally, there's the endowment effect. Once we own something, we instantly feel it's worth more. A worn-out book, an old jacket, even a fading relationship. We cling to them not because they're truly valuable, but simply because they're ours. Attachment blurs the line between real worth and emotional value. These effects don't just exist in psychology labs. They seep into every corner of our lives. The things we buy, the people we love, the risks we take, the careers we choose. Each time we decide, we believe we're being objective, yet it's often just the story our brain wants us to believe. And perhaps, what Kahneman most wants us to see is this: the mind is never neutral. It doesn't tell us the truth. It tells us the version of truth we want to believe. Have you noticed that when you're tired, hungry, or stressed, everything suddenly feels harder to control? You get irritated more easily, make quick decisions, and sometimes do things that later make you sigh. Kahneman calls this the moment when the lazy brain takes over. When you're exhausted, you're no longer your best self. You become the energy-saving version of your mind. Though the brain makes up only about 2% of your body weight, it consumes nearly 20% of your total energy. That's why it's always looking for ways to save energy. When your energy drops, the slow thinking system, the part that analyzes and weighs options, begins to fall asleep. And that's when the fast system, ruled by intuition and reflex, quietly takes control. In those moments, your choices aren't guided by logic anymore, but by emotion and habit. One of Kahneman's most famous studies surprised even the scientific community. He and his colleagues tracked judges making parole decisions. The results were striking. The approval rate was highest in the morning, right after breakfast. But as noon approached, that number dropped almost to 0, then rose again after lunch. It wasn't that the prisoners had changed. It was the judges' tired brains. When we're fatigued, we naturally choose the safest, easiest option, which for the judges meant saying no. The same thing happens to us every day. When we're drained, we say things like, "Whatever, I'll deal with it tomorrow," or "Let's just keep it the same." Those choices may seem small, but they're signs that our brain is choosing the easiest path, not the wisest one. In the rhythm of modern life, between work, family, and endless responsibilities, we slowly lose the ability to pause and truly think. When we understand this, we might start blaming ourselves less for our mistakes, and instead, learn to care for our mind the way we care for our body, giving it enough rest and nourishment to think, not just react. Because in the end, only when the mind is clear and awake can we see the truth as it is, instead of being swept away by the noise of our own impulses. Intelligence isn't knowing more, it's knowing when to stop and think. Kahneman reminds us, we can't eliminate cognitive biases completely, but we can notice them. And that awareness is the first step toward wisdom. First, learn to spot your own biases. Each of us carries a personal lens shaped by experience, memory, and old beliefs. When you realize your mind tends to romanticize or to judge quickly, you're less likely to be led by it. The next time you assess someone on a first impression, ask, "Am I seeing this person, or only seeing through my own lens?" Second, practice slowing your thinking, just a little. Before you buy something, before you react to a comment, before you hit send, pause for a few seconds and take a deep breath. That tiny pause is the doorway for reason to enter. Many choices we later regret were missing exactly that moment of stillness. Third, cultivate mindfulness in simple ways. Eat a touch more slowly. Walk without looking at your phone. Listen to music without doing anything else. When you are truly present in each action, your mind is less swept away, and you begin to notice thoughts as they form. Finally, keep your energy steady. A depleted brain can't think clearly. Sleep enough, eat enough, rest enough. This isn't just caring for the body, it's nourishing your reason. When the body is replenished, the slow thinking system can engage, and the world comes into clearer focus. Practicing slow thinking isn't about being sluggish, it's about living with intention. Each time you pause long enough to see what you're really thinking, you're learning to govern yourself. And perhaps that is the truest sign of intelligence, a quiet wisdom, awake in every small choice we make. It's fascinating to think that the man who helped the world understand how irrational we truly are was himself one of the most humble about intelligence. Daniel Kahneman was born in a time of upheaval, a world where people constantly had to choose between fear and hope. Perhaps that's why he devoted his life to answering what seems like a simple question. Why do we think, feel, and act in ways that even we ourselves can't always understand? From a psychologist, Kahneman became the first to bring the science of cognition and emotion into the field of economics, and eventually won the Nobel Prize. Not because he invented something new, but because he helped the world see something that had always been there. Humans are not as rational as we like to believe, yet what made his work touch millions wasn't that he exposed our flaws. It was his quiet faith that we can learn to live more mindfully. Kahneman never saw emotion as the enemy. On the contrary, He believed that reason isn't meant to fight emotion, but to understand what our emotions are trying to tell us. Because only when we learn the language of the mind can we truly have a conversation with ourselves, one that is honest, gentle, and kind. If you're still listening now, you might belong to a rare group. Those who don't just seek knowledge, but are learning to observe their own thoughts. You don't need to be a scientist to do that. All it takes is a little stillness, a little slowing down, and a little courage to look inward. The journey Kahneman began is, in truth, the same journey we are all on. The journey of learning to understand and to finally make peace with our own minds. Every time you slow your thinking, you reclaim a little freedom for yourself. Kahneman once said that within us exist two systems, and also two ways of living, one that reacts and one that chooses. Most of the time, we let the reactive side take control because it's faster, easier, and requires no effort. But when we live that way, we drift through life on autopilot, repeating old patterns without even realizing it. To think slowly is not just a skill, it's a mindful way of living. It's when you pause in the middle of endless notifications before replying to a comment that upsets you, or in that split second before you react without knowing why. In that short pause, you're no longer carried away by emotion. You're beginning to take back the wheel of your own mind. In that single moment, you don't just change your reaction, you quietly change the direction of your life. Those who live by reflex are led by circumstances. Those who reflect become the ones who lead their own lives. Slow thinking doesn't make you weaker, it makes you deeper. It allows you to choose your response instead of letting your response choose you. And every time you notice yourself thinking fast, being pulled by emotion, and then stop, you've just taken one small step forward on the journey of mastering your own mind. When we think slowly, we start to see that reason and emotion aren't two separate worlds. They are two rhythms of the same heart. To think slowly is to listen to your feelings without letting them rule you. To be gentle enough to understand yourself, yet clear enough to choose what's right. And perhaps that is what true freedom really means. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to be aware of what you're doing. One slower breath can change the course of a day. One thoughtful pause can keep you from a great mistake. And one quiet moment of observing your own mind can open the door to an entirely new life. Remember, wisdom isn't about knowing more, but about being awake enough to see how your own mind works. When you slow your thinking, you step out of automatic living. To truly live, to truly be present, and to truly be free. If you've stayed until this moment, it's likely you're not just learning about thinking, you're already practicing mindfulness in your own life. Thank you for walking through this journey with me, slowly, patiently, and with awareness. Somewhere around you, there may be people still living too fast, reacting more than choosing, swept away by the rush of work and emotion. If you feel this video could help them pause, breathe, and look a little deeper within, share it as a small gift, a gentle reminder that sometimes, just by slowing down a little, we already begin to live differently. And if you wish to keep going on this journey, the journey of understanding your mind, your emotions, and your truest self, subscribe to Juliana Gray. Here, we read together, reflect together, and grow together, little by little, gently yet steadily, amidst the fast-paced rhythm of the world out there. Because sometimes, all it takes is to think a little slower, and you might just begin to find your way back to yourself.